Welcome to the Subjective Professor podcast, where we reject coercion and hypocrisy. This is episode 250, and we're going to talk about World War III. So it appears that the current administration, obviously not Biden, but probably Blinken and Sullivan, are trying to push this idea of war with Russia. And so they greenlit the use of longer range missiles into Russia, missiles which have a 190-mile range. They wouldn't hit anything important, but nevertheless, they are going to be using US satellite information to target certain things within or past the border in Russia. It is interesting to note that Ukrainians have sent ordnance, right, drones and other kinds of offensive weapons to hit Moscow itself, far, further than 190 miles. So this is kind of nothing new, perhaps, that has already been a threat on the part of Ukraine to do sort of stunts like this, because obviously it has no military value. It's more of a propaganda tool, perhaps, uh, a signal to people in America that, hey, we're still fighting over here, send us more money. So the idea is, and the worry is, will Putin take the bait? Will he respond as he said he would, that if US weapons operated by US personnel using US satellite information in the name of Ukraine, is used against Mother Russia, would Putin retaliate in the way that he said he would? Because obviously at this point, it's pretty much the United States that's waging war against Russia, and so therefore Russia will treat NATO as the other person that they're fighting in the war. So Russia is just totally demolishing Ukraine. But when things looked a little bit brighter, a lot of companies invested into Ukraine, buying up properties, probably making bids on contracts for reconstruction, assuming that they win the war, right? Uh, and I've mentioned this before, but BlackRock has bought like what, a third of the Ukraine because of all the farmland. And so wouldn't it be awesome if they lose all that money, right? Because of the negotiated settlement that they would have to make in order for all the fighting to stop. Because you know that Russia will not sort of give up the land that they had conquered or have taken so easily. And, if we were to look at it from the other point of view, Mexico attacked the United States using Russian weapons, then the United States probably, if they took land from Mexico, they wouldn't give it back. And so, why should Russia? And I just want you to note that Biden said about 2 years ago that Putin already lost. Well, if this is what losing looks like, I wonder what Ukraine winning looks like, right? Alistair Crook, who was on the Judge Napolitano Judging Freedom podcast, he said some pretty interesting things. He's a former ambassador of England, I believe, to Russia. But basically, he's saying that a lot of American companies, a lot of Western countries, and the companies operating in those countries realize that they need food, and so that's why they're trying to buy up all the farmland in the Ukraine. There are also other things going on in Ukraine, like bio research labs, like the one in Wuhan, China, right? And what's her Victoria Nuland admitted that that was the case, right? So I forget who asked him the question. I saw the clip, the video, and it was a question designed for her to be able to deny that there were no biolabs in the Ukraine. But obviously, the story had already come out. That's why the question was being asked. And so she said, well, yeah, right. I heard that there were 12, but I think in that podcast they mentioned that there were many more than that. What are they doing? What kind of biological research are they doing? One wonders, sarcastically speaking. Also, the North Koreans and Ukraine thing came up again. I already talked about that in episode 229. It's obviously just simply a stunt. It's just propaganda. It's just beating the drums, trying to get people all scared. But seriously, North Korea, what are they going to do in Russia? So, as um, was already mentioned on the Judge Knapp podcast, they don't even speak the language, right? Russians can't talk to the Koreans can't talk to the Russians. So what's really going on here? I mentioned, and my suggestion was in episode 229, that they were there to check out the training. How are you beating American strategy and weapons? We want to know because South Korea uses American strategy and weapons. And so if you were able to defeat them, we want to know how it's done. All right. And so they're there pretty much to learn, to train. I explained before. Most Western countries, too, when they see a hot war, they want to test weapons. They want to test out strategy. They want to see what the opposition is like, how they respond to certain weapon systems. What weapon systems do they have? And so it's a very common sense, very common, not so surprising, very predictable military behavior. A word on Trump's cabinet picks. I was thinking it, and then I heard someone say it today that, for him to be able to carry out the domestic reforms that he wants to do, he has to give a nod to the Israeli lobby. So just how far will Trump go with these picks and with Israel? Just how much money will he greenlight to Israel? Just how many weapon systems will he send to Israel? Um, it was also mentioned, if Trump gets into office and he finds out just how bad it is in Israel, just how badly things are going for Israel, hopefully that people will level with him and make him understand that Israel is not doing well. Some people might even say losing to all of these, because of these offensives that it's taken. It's stretched too thin. And they've taken heavy casualties, and soldiers refuse to go back, right? They're not showing up. I wouldn't call it desertion, failure to show up for muster. Maybe that's the way might want to call it. But if you start arresting soldiers for going AWOL, that is not showing up to fight, right? Because you got to imagine there's got to be a lot of PTSD going on over there. There's only so much killing that you can do before it starts to affect you. And I think they're just normal people who are all jazzed up about fighting, just like all the other wars. And then once you get in it, it's not what you thought. It's a lot bloodier. It's a lot scarier. It's nothing like you imagined. And so people just simply are not into it anymore, right? And that usually is what happens. Hopefully, that is what is happening in Israel. And so people are just getting so jaded, so horrified by what's happening that they don't want to fight anymore. And that's probably why Netanyahu is trying to escalate himself to drag the United States in. And, the United States and Israel, that relationship is so weird. And it is not, uh, it wouldn't be the first time for Israel to do bad things to America to just get them to be involved in a war. It's not a good thing. I mentioned before that, Peter Schiff said that the DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, is more like a think tank. While I'm inclined to believe what Peter Schiff says, because, he's often right. Uh, it seems like it's taking on a different shape, that they might have some sort of authority in the sense that Trump does listen to them. And it might be that they will, I don't know, abolish certain departments, or they'll say we want to audit something, and so then Trump will greenlight that. Who knows how they'll use executive orders and whatnot. But really, they should be talking to Ron Paul to get his ideas, right? Because Ron Paul, when he was running for president in 2012, he said that right in the first day of taking office, if he wins, he would abolish five of the government agencies. And so they should really talk to him to see what he had in mind. I already guess, and he mentioned something in passing, that you give him severance pay, right? That would be one way of doing it to keep all of the people less mad. And so it doesn't make sense that you simply just can't cut these departments. Also, audit the Pentagon, the Pentagon. They keep failing their audits, right? And I think Ron Paul mentioned that it was a seventh time that they failed, which seems kind of crazy, a number, but clearly they're wasting a lot of money, right? They're wasting money in terms of weapons programs, in personnel, too many high-ranking officers, the things like this. And so definitely needs an audit. They need to trim it down, become a real fighting force. And you need to get someone like Colonel McGregor in there who understands world politics as well as strategy, right? You need someone like him in there to clean house and get us back on track. Now, to close up today's episode, I wanted to read a couple of selections, one from Thucydides, which is great on justice, human nature, power, and Dwight D. Eisenhower. So, first thing, Thucydides, this is in chapter 2, when Corinth is trying to trick Sparta into going to war with Athens. And so there's this exchange, there's this debate that's going on in Sparta. Corinth goes to Sparta to try to get them to join the war. And, because there is no war yet, you have Athenians there too. And so you have this conversation, this debate that goes, uh, back and forth. And, Thucydides records it for our reading pleasure because history repeats or it rhymes, however you want to say it. But to me, it repeats, right? Because the dynamic is pretty much the same. So Corinth says at one point, they say, instead of attacking them for your own defense, you are waiting for them to attack when the odds against winning will be much worse for you. Well, what are they talking about there? Preemptive strike, right? So you have to attack to defend yourself, right? That's what they're trying to say. And so they're trying to say you gotta attack Athens first. Don't wait for them to attack you, right? Because if they do first strike, then they'll have an advantage. Then they say of the Athenians, they love innovation and are quick to invent a plan, then carry it out in action, while you are good only for keeping things as they are. You never invent anything or even go as far as necessary action. And so what you see here is the Athenians are innovators, they're liberal, and the Spartans are conservatives, right? They want to keep things as they are. It's a different way of looking at Athenians love philosophy, Spartans love war. It's different because they obviously all engage in war. Athens had a large navy, Sparta had none, right? So you have this, interesting dynamic between the two city states. But essentially, the Corinth is just basically goading the Spartans into war. And then Archidamus, who is a Spartan, he hears all of this and he replies. He says, if we're not careful, we will leave this war as a legacy to our children, kind of like today, right? I mentioned before that in the Afghan war, I saw this story where a kid was joining the same unit that his father was a member of in the same war, the Afghan war, right? And that's pathetic, right? So, I mean, they made it try to sound like it was an awesome thing. But if you're in a war so long that the father was in the war and the son is in the war, the same war, there's something seriously wrong going on there. But people really didn't seem to notice. I continue with Archidamus's quote. Complaints can be resolved whether they are from cities or individual, but a war engages everyone for the sake of a few personal interests. A war's progress cannot be foreseen, and there is no decent way to end it easily, right? Look, if you got a dispute with me, like, okay, I got a problem with Putin, well, talk to him, right? Don't start a war so then the rest of us have to somehow start killing each other, right? A massacre, a war is a massacre of people who don't know each other, because of people who do know each other but don't massacre each other. It's like, ugh. So then he goes on, he says, war depends on finance. Archidamus, he continues with some interesting words of wisdom. Uh, you know, war needs money to pay for the weapons. And so because of this, he's saying, collect the money first and then see if you can afford this war, right? Because, that's the thing. If we actually had to pay the war honestly, not by debt, but honestly, no one would agree to pay for it, right? Like if everyone actually had to pay out of pocket for all of these wars, right? No one would ever agree to it. And so that's what Archidamus is saying. It's like war depends on finance. But how does US do it? By inflating $36 trillion, right? That's how they're doing it. They're stealing from us through inflation. And then he says, yes, we are slow and make delays. That's their biggest complaint about us. But don't be ashamed of that. This slowness of ours is really nothing but clear-headed self-control. It is this that gives us our unique ability to restrain our arrogance in success. And so people are constantly rushing to go to war, right? Don't think about it. Don't think about it. Don't wait for research. Don't wait for proof. Don't wait for a debate. Just do it because they're so bad. We got to do it now. Well, that's what they did back in the day as well. And cooler heads, wiser heads are saying, don't rush in. You got to think about it. You got to look at all the other sides. Why don't we talk to Athens before we rush into this war? Right? That's what he's suggesting clearly because he's already seen war and he knows that those other clowns have no idea what they're talking about. Um, and then he says, too, the Athenians, are ready to go to arbitration. And in such a case, it is not lawful to attack them first. So if you're in the middle of negotiation, why are you going to attack them, right? Trick them into thinking that we're going to talk and then you bomb them, right? So this is just, this kind of phenomenon. You can see it playing out even today, especially if you look past all of the lies. I want to close this episode by reading a small passage from Dwight D. Eisenhower's Atoms for Peace. It's a speech he gave to the UN, that unfortunate entity in New York City. Atoms for Peace, and this is in December 8th, 1953. Okay, I excerpt it, right? Just some parts. So I'll read it quickly. I know that the American people share my deep belief that if a danger exists in the world, it is a danger shared by all, and equally that if hope exists in the mind of one nation, that hope should be shared by all. The United States knows that if the fearful trend of atomic military buildup can be reversed, this greatest of destructive forces can be developed into a great boon for the benefit of all mankind. The United States knows that peaceful power from atomic energy is no dream of the future. The capability already proved is here today. Who can doubt that if the entire body of the world's scientists and engineers had adequate amounts of fissionable material with which to test and develop their ideas, this capability would rapidly be transformed into universal, efficient, and economic usage? Against the dark background of the atomic bomb, the United States does not wish merely to present strength, but also the desire and the hope for peace. The coming months will be fraught with fateful decisions in this assembly, in the capitals and military headquarters of the world, in the hearts of men everywhere, be they governed or governors. May they be the decisions which will lead this world out of fear and into peace. You may know 1953 is when the police action in Korea came to an end. And the world was, there were a lot of tensions going on in the world. And Eisenhower was trying to diffuse, try to walk back a lot of this stuff. So may the leaders today have that same level of sanity, uh, expose all of the warmongers for who they are, punish them, hold them accountable for all the death and destruction that they have brought, and so that the rest of us can continue to live in peace, that which pretty much everyone, if given a choice, would always choose. That's it for today. I will talk to you next time.